excited to introduce you all today to one of our farm families coming from Casa Grande, Arizona. And we get to see some cute goats because today we're going to be learning all about goats and the goat farm from the Kennedy family who reside in Casa Grande. And I think Heather and Richie should be on. So as long as you unmute yourself, you can take over from here.
Hi, so it is just me today, Heather Kennedy, and my family and I raise meat goats down here in Casa Grande. This is a relatively new venture for us. In the past 3 or 4 years is as long as we have been doing it. But it is the entire family working on our farm. So there is my husband and I and his dog, which has since passed, Dude. And then we have our 4 beautiful children who are such a blessing and such a help on the farm. We're moving on. Okay, so the youngest, Paxton, is 13, and the oldest, my daughter Heidi, is 20. So that's the age range there of these kids that are helping us. And Owen and Carson right in the middle, 17 and 15. They're just a tremendous help on the farm. And they love every bit of it. We homeschool our children. They would much rather be out working on the farm, and just be outside with the animals and running the business. It's a big thing for them. And so on to the goats. So we are a meat goat operation, not dairy goats. And so we aim for the breeds with the genetics that are more muscled for meat production. And the ones that we strive to keep on our place is a mix of the Spanish goat breed, the Boers, and the Savannahs. And they all have different characteristics. The Boer is the most popular for a meat goat breed, and they're just very meaty, very stout, big boned goats, which is something you would want. They're not traditionally known for being good mothers. And so that's where we bring in the Spanish goat breed. And the Savannahs are likewise very meaty, big boned, and they are better at mothering. The Spanish goats are very good mothers. They just have that high mothering instinct. And so we like to crossbreed these to get the best of all the breeds that we can. So we have different age ranges naturally on our goat farm. We've got the billy goats, and their genetic power is really important on our facility to bring out good meat characteristics in the kids. And then we have the does, the moms. That's very important as well, having good structure themselves, good udders and teats in order to raise the kids. And like I said before, that good mothering characteristics where they will look after their kids, take care of them. We're not all perfect. It's a fallen world. And so some of these goats, they're not the best at it, but we're able to help them out with that. And then we have the little babies. That's the fun age. They are so playful, and they're just a lot of fun. And then what we call the doelings or the bucklings. We don't have a place for the bucklings, but that would be like once they're weaned, their teenage kind of years before they go off to be bred. We separate them all out, keep them separated. So here's our billy goats, and we have, since Katie had put this together, we have brought onto the farm a few more high-powered bucks with or billy goats. The terms go back and forth depending on who you talk to. It could be a billy goat or it could be a buck. But we have brought on some more high-powered, high-muscled Boer goats that are pretty impressive, but we just don't have a picture of them on here. But this very first billy goat you can see, that's Marco. Here's our original, and he's more of the Spanish type breed. And he's put off some really amazing offspring for us. The next picture over, you can see the all white ones. We have some Savannah bucks there. And then the one next to him where it's a good headshot, that's our one Kiko Billy. And he's getting kind of old. I think he's going to retire. But he's got quite a set of horns on him. He's impressive to look at from the side. And that is another meat breed that we didn't put on the front page, but that's an additional meat breed that is used. Behind him, you will see a Boer Billy standing there, but he had his horns removed when he was little. And some people do dehorn the goats when they're younger. We prefer the horns to stay on. That's the way God designed them. And it's a perfect design for trying to handle these goats and move them around, because they're the perfect handles to hold on to when you need to grab them. So we like to keep the horns on if possible. The last picture there, you can see the silver colored Billy. That's also one of the Spanish breed colorings. And that is such a unique coloring. It's fun to see that color pop out in the different kids. It's a real unique look.
And then Heather, with the
Yeah.
Billy goats for breeding, do you do artificial insemination or live cover?
Live cover, natural service. We put them out. In fact, we just let all the gentlemen go out with their ladies just this past week. So we spread them around the doe pens so they can, hopefully we'll have kids from this crop in November, December. And so, and with that, with artificial insemination, you can pretty much time it and know exactly. With natural service, they go along with their cycle. And so the kidding can take a little bit longer, and you have an idea when it's going to start, but it can drag on because each doe, their cycles are just a little bit off from each other. But that's okay. It doesn't give us a flood all at once. It's easier to handle. So that's the way we do it. Next, we're on to the does. And you can see in the picture, we just have a variety of colors because of all the crossbreeding that we have on our farm. The top picture, she is a unique one. She came to us with our initial herd. Not really genetics we were necessarily after, but she's unique, and she's got that long shaggy hair all over her, and she has a little attitude, and she's just earned the name Fancy Pants. And she stands out from the crowd, and she's just has a unique kind of ornery personality. Down in the middle picture, you can see how our pen structure is set up. This was a calf ranch. We used to raise cattle on our facility. And so we had to retrofit the pens. You can see along the front side of that corral, there's wooden boards. We had to put those up so the goats couldn't jump all the way out. Theoretically, some do jump out. They are escape artists, but for the most part, it keeps them contained, and they all line up to eat. They're eating their morning breakfast, and they get a little ornery trying to find their spot in line. Then at the top picture, we have a doe that had just kidded. And goats, I'm sure you all have heard or know maybe from your own experience, but they're very social animals. And so you'll have other does coming over to check out. Sometimes they want to steal the other doe's baby, especially we have found if that other doe is close to having her own kid, she will all of a sudden latch onto somebody else's kid. And so that has posed a problem sometimes. But for the most part, they are very good mothers. They stick right by that baby, clean it off, nudge it to get it to stand up and start moving around, get that circulation flowing by licking it, and then nudging it to start nursing. And it's a real fun process to watch. And here we have the doelings. So these are ones that have been weaned from mom, and they are starting life on their own. We typically wean them from their mom between 3 months, and sometimes just because of the timing, they'll actually get to stay a little bit longer, like 5 months. But around 3 months is the average that we pull them off from mom, and they get to move to their own pen altogether. We do creep feed the babies in the mom's pen before they're weaned. And that means we create a little opening and have a little feed trough with grain to help jumpstart their growth so that only the babies can get in there and start eating grain and learning to eat on their own. And then when they move to their own corral, once we've weaned them off of mom, they continue to get that grain and alfalfa. And back to the kids. So the little newborn kids, they really are just so much fun, and they're so full of life. And once they find their feet and they get on their feet, it doesn't take them long to be just moving around and jumping on each other and real playful. We have sheep also on our farm, about 50 head of sheep, and the lambs are very sweet, very gentle, but these little goat babies are just so much more playful. It's really fun to see that difference in personality between the sheep and the goats.
And Heather, could you share what the difference would be from a kid that has a pink or red tag versus a yellow tag?
Yes, so with the number of goats that we have on our farm, which is pushing 800 right now, we have to identify all of them. And so looking out in the corral and seeing all the different kids, we need to know what the pink and the yellow right now signify whether it's a girl or a boy. So the pink naturally is girl and the yellow is for the boys. And so that we can easily identify that when we're sorting, especially weaning, when we're going to be separating the females from the males. It's very helpful. And then those tags, they also have their own unique ID number. And we also then on the back of the tag will write any information. So if we pick up that goat without looking on our computer system, we can see some of the pertinent information that we need to on that tag and know who the mom is and quickly find her if they've gotten separated or whatnot. And here you can see some video Katie took on that foggy day when she came out. It's really not dusty, it's just a whole lot of fog. It was a unique morning when she came out, but the kids just love to jump and play. We put logs in the pens, and we put old tires, and they just love jumping up and playing on that. And they were very curious about Katie's camera. They loved that. And then we have guard dogs that we put in the corrals. And that guard dog, he is a goat lover, which is a good thing. And he's just super gentle with them. They love just climbing all over him. And he will always be like nuzzled in with the goats. So that's pretty fun. So this is what we do for newborn care. The goats, like I said, for the most part, are very good moms. They get the kids up, get them to start nursing. But what we do, and you can see my younger son here in the middle picture bent over, we trim their umbilical cords so it's not dragging in the ground. And then we dip it in iodine so that it keeps it clean and keeps infection out, just to help that kid with every chance we can to stay healthy. You can see my other son helping my younger son. That's Owen and Paxton in the far picture. And they are tag teaming a pair of twins. So trimming the navel and dipping it in iodine. And then my son is giving it a vitamin shot. So every new kid gets a vitamin shot just to help boost that kid's system to keep them healthy. And then we watch them to make sure that the babies are staying with mom and bonding with mom. You can see in the middle picture, the two twins that my son is working on have their legs hobbled together. There's like little yellow straps, one on each leg. That is what we use to help out when one of the twins is weaker and doesn't stay with mom. We hobble their legs together so the stronger kid will drag its weaker sibling to stay up with mom. Otherwise, there's a tendency for mom and the stronger kid to go off, and the weak one is left behind saying, hey, what about me? And I don't know where to go now. So this helps that from happening. And so that will stay on for maybe 3 days. And then once they figured life out, we take it off and they're just fine.
Now, Heather, you mentioned before that sometimes for the does that they go and maybe try and steal somebody else's baby.
Yes, they do.
What happens when that happens, or how do you deter that, or how does that work itself out?
Okay, so we we'll do, we have little pens that we set up in the corrals for that type of situation where we can put the new mom and the new baby in that pen, or we can, the doe that is trying to do the stealing, we can take her off to the side and pen her up just to separate that situation until that other doe has her baby, and then she realizes, hey, everything's okay, I have my own baby now. And then also we will use those pens if the mom is just having a hard time being a good mom sometimes, and you just need to get them closed off by themselves so the two of them can bond and figure out their new life together. So here we've switched to the picture of our milk machine. This is a new addition to the farm. Love whoever came up with the technology for this, because prior to this, when we would have orphan goats because of, there's been times where we call it a birth and run, where without us seeing it, a doe has had a kid and does not even go towards the kid. So we have this kid with no mom, in essence, just abandoned, and we have no one that we can pick out to attach it to, because it's not always obvious which one had a kid. So that creates an orphan. Or if the mom has triplets or quadruplets or any number of reasons, we can have orphan lambs that need a bottle. And initially we were having to make bottles, feed bottles, wash bottles multiple times a day, because these little goats need to eat very frequently throughout the day. And that was extremely time consuming and tedious. But we were able to invest in this automated milk machine where we pour powdered milk in the hopper, and it's all computerized. It has a heater on it. It mixes just the right amount of milk, pumps it through the tubes to a nipple on the other side of the wall, and the kids can eat ad lib as much as they need, which is even better for the goats. It's just a win-win for everybody. So really thankful for the technology. And that's one way that a lot of your students can realize that, you know, not everybody can own a goat farm or farm a, you know, crops or whatever, but there's so much technology that is needed for farms, which also brings you out to the farm to try out your technology, to see how it works or see the needs. And we appreciate everybody in those industries that are helping us to make this possible. Also on the technology department, using an app or a computer system like we've got here to help us keep track of all of these animals and to maintain good records so that it's good for business, it's good for the goat's health. It just helps overall. Having that kind of software is huge for us. And that's not something that we're experts in. We know raising animals. We don't know computer programming. Anyhow, so we have this program. So each of those IDs is put into this program, and I can bring up all the history on the goat. I can put in any health issues it may have had, who its parentage is, absolutely everything I can put into this system. It was written for cattle. You can see that on the screen, the animal type is a calf. It says it's a bull. We have ways to get around that, but this was the best system for our use that we could use for the goats. There are a few other goat systems out there, but they just weren't enough of what we needed to run this goat system. So we found little ways to tweak it to make it work. And it is working much better than the old Excel spreadsheets I was trying to do. So the food, so the goats get, on average, it's mainly alfalfa, but we will also mix in oat hay, peanut hay, sorghum. A lot depends on what's available and the time of year and what the goats are needing nutritionally. So we mix it in this big feed wagon that the tractor is pulling, and it has a large auger in the bottom. And so we dump all the hay or whatever ingredients we're putting in there, and the auger mixes it all together, and then it's got that conveyor belt that spits it out over into the feed bunk for the goats. You can see in the middle picture, our corrals that were originally for cattle had to be retrofitted with that wood panel on the backside. and then some extra wire on the insides. The goats still manage to get into the feed bunk, and they try and cheat the system and get first dibs on the hay as it's coming. We haven't found a way around that, but it hasn't been a problem. It's just kind of funny to watch them sneak in for the first bite.
Heather, we have a couple of questions coming in. Can
Yes.
you elaborate a little bit on why you guys transitioned from cattle to goats?
We transitioned from cattle to goats because of the cattle market at the time. It just wasn't that, it wasn't good. And so we had this facility that was really built towards raising calves, because we had raised calves up for beef. And so it was built for smaller animals. It just needed a little more sealing, because goats can get out. They still get out, even though we've sealed it pretty good, but not, they stay in for the most part. There's still those that are escape artists. But that's why we transitioned to goats. And the meat goat market is a growing market here in the United States. There is quite a demand for meat goats, and it just was a perfect fit. And we just got into it. It's been perfect for my children transitioning from cattle to goats, because when we did, they still hadn't hit their growth spurt, so they were a little bit smaller. So they could wrangle these goats pretty easy without getting banged up too much, as opposed to, big cattle. So the Lord's timing in all of this was really good for everybody involved.
And we have another question on where you get your alfalfa from. Do you get it locally? Do you guys grow it? And then a second part of that is, how much does a goat typically eat in a day?
So a goat, okay, I'm going to go backwards. Goat eats 3% of its body weight is what their nutritional needs are. So if it was a 100-pound goat, you take 3% of that. We grow alfalfa up in Glendale, actually, as another part of just trying to stay alive in this economic times. You got to diversify and have a variety of things to keep things going, because the markets are so volatile. So we grow our own alfalfa, and then we also end up buying some of our other feeds, like our peanut hay was coming out of Mexico, and hey, wherever we can find the food, we will. And sometimes it's cheaper for us to just bring our own hay up from Glendale and feed that.
And then we have some teachers who are just as fascinated with your milking machine as you are.
Yeah.
What is the brand of your milking machine? Your bottle maker? Do you know?
It's a Grober milk machine.
Such cool technology.
That is. Okay, still on this foggy day. It was so foggy. Here you can see our guy's loading the feed wagon. So he scoops up with that big loader loads of hay and dumps it in, and it's real dry. So it creates like a little poof of dust up there. But we back that up to a tank, and we fill it with some water to moisten it, which cuts down on the dust, so the goats aren't sitting there with their face in dusty feed. It also increases the palatability of the feed. It brings out the smell of the alfalfa, and it's just a softer, ration for them to chew on. So that's what we do. And then he drives along and pours it in there for all the goats. There are scales on that feed wagon, so we can calculate just how much is going in and weigh it out, which is really nice. Another technology thing that is much needed for the agriculture industry.
And Heather, can you share at what age the doelings and bucklings are ready to begin producing bebés?
Yeah, so they are able to be bred roughly 10 months to a year is when you could start breeding them, when they're old enough to start breeding.
And that would be, if they were just in nature, they would naturally do it at that same time.
Well, yes. Well, actually in nature, they're physically capable even earlier. And so that's why we've got to wean them and separate them because, for especially the little doeling's health, having that baby when her body hasn't matured enough, it is naturally available to them to do that, but it's not ideal for them. So we wait until 10 months to a year when they're more developed. And then we get to do the nail salon for the goats. Their little hoofs grow. Well, there's another genetic trait that we watch for and can start trying to steer our herd in the direction of not needing their hooves trimmed as much, because you have some goats that just grow their hooves like crazy. And so we have to trim everybody's hooves, and not all of them need it as badly. Some get really out of hand. But so every goat gets laid down and has to have their hooves trimmed. Down in the bottom corner, you can see my sons. This was at the start of our goat operation when we didn't have the tip table. They'd have to gently lay we all would get out there, gently lay the goats down and then start trimming each hoof bent down on the ground. That gets very tiresome with that many goats. So my husband, who's very, very handy in the shop, built a tip table that the goats can go in. So it's got padding and you can't really see it on the inside. It's got padding and some carpet in there. So it hugs onto the goat's belly, and we tip them down or tip them to the side. So they're laying sideways. And then that puts their hooves up at a working level that is a lot less strenuous on us. And so we get my two sons there trimming the hooves front and back. You need to take a turn.
And Heather, we have another question. At what age are the goats harvested for meat?
Around 6 months. So, it could be, that would be the earliest, is around 6 months. But in the meat market, there is a variety of desires out there. Some people want them older, some people want them younger. But for us, it's around 6 months, 5 to 6 months is the age where most people want it. And so that's what we try and go for, because that's where you get the most money. So.
And then we have another question real quick. Is eating 3% of their body mass pretty typical for any kind of animal like cattle, or did cattle eat more?
That is a good question that I don't know the answer to. My kids might, but they're not here. So I don't have that one on the top of my head. So now we've moved on to the dogs. We make use of dogs on our facility as guard dogs and also working dogs. And so in the upper corner, we have Chief. Chief and Gopher. Gopher is Chief's son. They're both Great Pyrenees. Gopher probably has a little bit of Akbash cross in him from his mother, but they are very good guard dogs. They do like to wander, which can be a problem. So Gopher right now is having a hard time staying in his pen. Chief is a good boy and he stays put, but Gopher is a wanderer. And so that poses a challenge trying to keep him in, because dogs can jump out of almost anything. But they're very good. Chief is a very affectionate dog. He just loves on you and so affectionate. Gopher's very good at guarding. He can get really grumpy if someone else is coming up to the pen. So that's a good characteristic that we want. The next one over, his name was Doggy. That was my son Paxton's dog, and he has since passed. He had an unfortunate accident with a car at the road, but he was such a great help rounding up the goats or the sheep. And he had this knack. He knew which goat we were trying to get to either catch that had gotten out of the corral or whatever. He knew which one we were going. There could be a group of goats, and he would watch your cues and know which one you were after. And you would just give him this command and he would go after it, and he would grab it and hold it down for you, which is so helpful. King is another just a guard dog, and he's the one that just loves the goats, and the goats love to climb on him. And then we have a couple other dogs. My son Owen has a dog that is learning to do what Doggy does and can hold down a goat, which is really helpful. And a new puppy, we'll see what he can do. He's still too young, so.
Well, we have teachers here sharing your love of dogs, and
Yeah.
specifically the Great Pyrenees. One of our participants has one of their own. So,
Oh yes, they are sweet dogs.
okay, now this is a question I'm sure that everybody has back with the goats. How is goat meat typically prepared? And are there like common dishes or recipes that use specifically goat meat?
Goat meat is really more of an ethnic in ethnic foods. I mean, you could basically take it and prepare it like you do beef or, you know, any other meat. It's to everyone's liking. Traditionally, in the ethnic recipes, it's usually stewed and braised. There's a lot of smoked goat, like for barbecue.
Maybe I'll find some recipes and I'll put in the chat
Yeah.
a little bit later. And last question as we are rounding out the tour, back to the dogs. How do you train the dogs to pin down the goats that you're looking for? Or do the dogs just know from instinct what they're supposed to do?
Part of it is instinct. Doggy was trained by some local sheep herding family here, had used him, and they trained him to do that. So he came trained, and then the other dogs picked it up from him, just following what he would do. My son Owen's dog did go to doggy herding school, and so he picked up a few other lessons there. But the biggest for pinning down the goats was by watching Doggy do it and trying to mimic him.
That's awesome. So very interesting. Thank you again for joining us today and sharing a little bit about your family. I don't know if you want to explain that picture down in the left-hand corner or not.
Oh, the bottom corner. So it's kind of hard to see, but my boys are on unicycles. That unicycles are a big thing around my house. And their Ranger, or Polaris Ranger, that they use to haul feed over to their own, they have their own personal herds of goats at our house, and they have to haul feed over to them. That broke down. And so on the farm, you just have to learn to be resourceful and come up with your own ways to get things done. And so the boys hooked up a wagon, loaded it up with their feed, and then fashioned straps onto their onto the wagon to pull behind them as they're riding their unicycle to pull their feed over. And so it's fun seeing all the various ways that they come up with to get the job done.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, we are rounding out our time. So thank you for joining us this morning and sharing a little bit about your amazing goat farm.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.